Now that people are going down the rabbit hole that are groypers, I consider groypers to be tip of the iceberg when it comes to the absolute weirdos of online far-right extremism. If we go down the iceberg a little bit, it just gets more strange, and more deranged. And as this comment said, My Little Pony. My Little Pony had a huge Nazi problem, and that's because of the Bronies. If you are fortunate enough to not know what the Bronies are a very, very, very large group of men who were ultra fans of the My Little Pony Little Girls cartoon show. They exploded in the early 2000s, and they bastardized and co-opted the fandom so bad that every time people spoke about My Little Pony or My Little Pony was mentioned, it was kind of assumed that they were talking about Bronies. Like, it was a pretty big problem. And yes, it is weird that a group of grown men are such fanatic fans of a cartoon series very clearly made for little girls. And more often than not, Bronies were attracted to those ponies. I will not be elaborating further. Use your imagination, but it will not scratch the surface. And you might be wondering, what does this incredibly deranged group have to do with ultra far-right movements? It just does. And it became a Nazi dog whistle. So the Brony community was also very, very active and popular in 4chan, and then slowly but surely their ideologies bled across r/pol, where all of the far-right indoctrinations happened, and before you know it, Nazi bronies were making Photoshop artwork of the mustache man hugging like a My Little Pony character and talking about how he did what he needed to do to save his friends or whatnot. And some nutjob also wrote an entire book explaining how the My Little Pony universe was a allegory for what a completely homogenous white society would look like a white utopia. And he basically went on to explain and say that the fictional universe of Equestria, where all the My Little Ponies live, is such a perfect place is because they're all just filled with ponies. So in theory, if it were just like if the West was just one homogenous white ethno-state, Christo ethno-state, then the West would also be a perfect utopia. What's the correlation? Don't ask me. I'm a normal human being, but that became a pretty big like cultural zeitgeist for Nazi bronies, and it became so popular that even the mainstream KKK started using it as an indoctrination book for children. The more you know.
The most interesting thing about the My Little Pony online fandom community is that they developed their own dialect called Brony speak, and it's actually surprisingly sophisticated. Of course, they just started out using words from the show's dialogue, like every pony and any pony instead of everybody and anybody. But over time, they also started combining other words with horse terminology to make entirely new vocabulary. The word brony is one obvious example, but you also have Pegasister, Pony Sona, and Brohoof from Bro Fist plus Hoof. A lot of their language also evolved through memes, like the word plot is used as a synonym for butt because of a popular joke that bronies watch the show for the plot. Then there's buck instead of fuck, which spread through memes like this, and clopping for gooning, which spread through Rule 34 art. Critically, a lot of this language was created on 4chan boards where user anonymity meant that there was a constant need to demonstrate a performative proficiency in shared slang. To identify themselves to others in the fandom, many bronies would engage in deliberate linguistic play, including sneaking in little syntactic references to the show, like blank % cooler or Dear Princess Blank, which are now part of the dialect's grammar. However, these kinds of phrases also just served as tools for these adolescent men to build their own identities online. Bronies within the community will self-regulate about a lot of things, like correcting each other over proper fandom language, which incentivizes a continuous performance of brony behavior while at the same time radically welcoming newcomers through this aesthetic lens of friendship is magic.
Watching My Little Pony the movie again, and you guess what this thing contains? Sure, everyone loves their Nazi pony propaganda, right?
What is a brony? Oh, brother, you're about to be so upset you just asked that.
So a brony is someone that's interested in the My Little Pony, more specifically Friendship is Magic, the fourth generation of shows.
It's a term basically that refers to a fan in the same way that Trekker does for Star Trek or Whovian does for Doctor Who. basically someone who's a fan of the franchise, watches the show.
That is a brony. Yes, it is literally any full-grown man over the age of 25 obsessed with My Little Pony. And I'm just gonna say it, I don't trust him. Can you please get this off my screen? I told you were gonna regret it. At least the plus side that we can take away from this whole stream is we all learned something new.
God forbid a molester. As most of us are aware, there's a darker side to the fandom which we know pretty well. To Mrs. Oliver and Miss Libman. Great. Alright, so I'm pretty sure you're aware of Princess Celestia being portrayed as a tyrant, an internet troll, and God forbid a molester. And Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy on occasion.
No. Yeah, so I'm gonna let you know from where I stand. The darker side of the fandom is not part of what I will talk about. It's not part of what the show's about. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. It's not why we're here. So, my name is Nicole Oliver. I voice Princess Celestia. I voice Shirley, and I'm really glad you all.
About the human characters, especially Megan, and the relationship between the humans and the ponies. Did you just think about wanting to do that originally for G4 in the earlier phases? Or did it just kind of it was rejected initially, or not prevented at all, and then later figured out for Equestrian Girls?
I early on in the development process, I had considered that Hasbro might ask me to bring in Megan, because working in the animation business, I was kind of anticipating girls can't relate to horses, they need to have a person to talk to and relate to, so you need to have a person in the story. So I was expecting them to do that. They never did, not even once, but I did have a little snippet of an idea to bring Megan in for maybe a special or something like that. It was a very brief idea that might have just been a one-shot idea, but I didn't need it, so I didn't really flesh it out.
Well, at least all brought up the Equestrian Girls. Thank you.
Sure.
This My Little Pony obsessed 19-year-old committed the worst mass shooting in Indiana state history. The 19-year-old Brandon Hull was born in August of 2001, and in August of 2020 he got a job at a FedEx facility, but only lasted a couple of months before he was fired in October for not showing up to work. Brandon was diagnosed with disruptive behavior disorder at the age of 10, and as he became a teenager, he grew increasingly violent, eventually dropping out of school and becoming physically and verbally abusive towards his mother. In March of 2020, Brandon's mother called police because Brandon was threatening to unalive himself with a shotgun he had got the previous day. When police arrived to the house and arrested Brandon to put him on a psychiatric hold, they found that he was looking at multiple websites dedicated to white supremacy. Now, under Indiana state law, since Brandon was under a psychiatric hold for gun violence, he shouldn't have been able to own a gun for at least 6 months. However, immediately after he was released from the hospital, Brandon went to a gun store and purchased 2 AR-15s. On April 15th, 2021, Brandon drove to the FedEx facility that he used to work at and opened fire on the employees, unaliving 8 of them ranging in age from 19 to 74 before turning the gun on himself. After the shooting, police found that Brandon was super obsessed with My Little Pony and that he had actually written a suicide note dedicated to one of the characters. In it, he stated, "I hope I can be with Applejack in the afterlife. My life has no meaning without her. If there is no afterlife and she isn't real, then my life never mattered anyway."
How? Hold on, bro. How? How you? I'm saying, how? Like, talk to me, bro.